cinematic universes can tell a story longer than any film, because a 3-hour film was actually like a 209-hour film. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was a man made of iron, a spider, and a soldier representing a portion of the North American continent. So we're talking about that today. Basically, it's time to sit down and put in those earbuds so as not to disturb the neighbors, because this is a book, a show about Broadway movies, TV shows, and so many other nerdy things. I'm Mark Stoufer the third.
I'm Hailey Briggs. Today's episode is all about cinematic universes, the good ones, the bad ones, and what separates them.
People love to make fun of cinematic universes. I think my favorite is Austin McConnell's Kentucky Fried Chicken cinematic universe. But it's a really hard thing to pull off, and the fact that Marvel has kind of become the standard and that we all ignore the DCU entirely speaks volumes to that.
Well, I mean, I personally haven't watched a lot of cinematic universes besides I guess you can count Disney as one, but and Marvel, just because they're the memorable ones. They're the ones that actually have story, especially Marvel, with how the movies all connect in a certain way, or there's Easter eggs of future or past movies in them.
Right. Yeah, I think that they definitely they definitely put a lot of work into making sure that the universe stays intact, that the movies feel connected, that for the most part they don't contradict each other. Kevin Feige works on pretty much all the Marvel projects since he's been hired, so there is that kind of sense of consistency because it's the same people that are making sure that everything feels similar, even if every movie is a little bit different.
I was gonna say, you gotta have that, like you said, a consistency and who works on it, because I guess if something goes wrong, you can be
nope, that's wrong, need to fix that.
Or if
Right.
something's not up to par, I guess they can be
Hey, this isn't what we want for the universe.
Yeah. And I also think what's really interesting to me is that the Marvel has different writers work on all of these different films. And so, Iron Man was in all the Iron Man films and the Avengers films and the Spider-Man films. And all of those films had different writers, but they all somehow managed to create a story that not only went through all those films, but also created dialogue and settings that felt true to that character, even though, and I guess technically it was a different writer for Captain America Civil War. So that character's had 4 different writers. And so I think it's so important that if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that the writers talk to each other and that they understand the material and that they respect the character, even though they didn't write his origin. That way it feels consistent.
I feel there was definitely a standard. They were
hey, you can't make major changes to this, otherwise we'll just kick you off and hire somebody else.
at least that's what I imagine the conversation going.
Yeah, probably.
Well, because if one writer messes it up or does one thing, movie fans and comic book fans are so diligent and remembering what the character was from the previous movie. So if they're not the same way they were in the next movie.
Yeah. I think that the other thing that's on the other end of the spectrum, you have to make sure that not every single one of your movies is exactly the same. Because
Right.
Star Wars ran into a similar issue with this, where the sequel trilogy was kind of just the original trilogy, but again, and so nobody really cared. And I think that Marvel has, they get made fun of for having the classic Marvel style, but I think that that's needed because then you can experiment with everything else. So you can get something like Thor Ragnarok, which feels completely different from Captain America the Winter Soldier, but both of them feel like they could exist in the same universe while having their own unique traits and styles that fit in there.
I have a confession. I've never seen a Star Wars movie.
That's
The one that I started to watch, I fell asleep during.
well, that's deeply troubling. Are you okay? Do you need help? Blink twice,
Yeah.
you're in danger.
I don't know. I was never really interested in Star Wars. I don't know. It just didn't really look interesting to me. And I guess, okay, so the story is I was at a friend's house, and it was a friend's house we would go to often before band, right after school. And they decided to watch Star Wars, and I fell asleep.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Well, let's see, because you're disappointed because I haven't seen Star Wars. You're disappointed because I like the Aladdin remake.
You also haven't seen Back to the Future, which is my favorite movie.
I've also not seen Back to the Future. I don't know. I think I'm more of a book person than a movie person. But
That's fair. That's fair, I suppose.
yeah, they probably have books of Star Wars or something, and I just don't know it.
I'm sure. They
Or
have everything in Star
comic
Wars.
books or something.
Yeah, I think they do.
But yeah, anyways, as you were saying, Marvel is like the most like popular cinematic universe. I think there's a lot of movies. I haven't seen every single movie in the chronological order, or like the timeline, as people say. So there's 23 of them. What's your favorite?
Okay, there are a couple answers. I think if I'm just gonna watch a movie, it's probably the first Avengers movie. But I think my favorite movie from a filmmaker's point of view, it has to be Endgame, because I think the things that they did with that movie, and that I think that is such a good representation of what a cinematic universe can be, because none of that would have been able to exist without the other 22 movies. So I guess 21, because Far From Home came after that. But that was kind of the culmination of like 18 years or whatever, and I think that was really the pinnacle of what you can do when you have a good connected universe like that.
Right. Mine probably has to be Avengers Civil War or any of the Spider-Man movies with Tom
That's
Holland.
good.
Just because, like, first off, Tom Holland is all in all of those ones that I just mentioned. But also, I don't know, it's just like they're so interesting. Like Civil War, it actually shows like, hey, not everybody's gonna agree with everybody, especially in the case of like saving the world or whatever. Like when I saw Civil War in theaters when it first came out. And this was kind of like my introduction to the Marvel movies. Like I had watched the first Avengers movie and I was like,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
but then like people at the theater were like,
Hey, like, you should watch the rest of these movies.
and I was like,
Okay.
so I actually started with the Iron Man movies. I watched all 3 of them, which I know doesn't literally make any sense because there's like 3 movies in between each Iron Man movie. But and then I watched Thor, and then that's all I've seen. And Doctor Strange. I've watched Doctor Strange. That was a pretty good movie. But I haven't seen like Black Panther or Hulk or anything, which makes me like I need to. It's my goal.
Yeah.
By like the end of the year that I watch all of the Marvel movies in order.
Yeah. That's like what, a solid 4 days if you're just gonna binge them all the way through. More
Yeah,
if
I
you
would
decide to
just
sleep.
shut myself in my room for 4 days and be like, all right, no one come in here. I'm watching all the movies straight in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that's a good point, though, is that I think in order to have a good cinematic universe, it has to be a universe. You can't just follow the same characters over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I think, there's a reason that you have the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and how, even within the Avengers, you have people like, the original Avengers, and you have Spider-Man who's often doing his own thing, and you have these different people, so you can tell these different stories within the same universe, because that's the only way for it to continue to be fresh. Because Marvel releases, it was so strange when we didn't get a Marvel movie this year. We got the Disney Plus shows, but that is a little bit different. And I think that the fact that they're releasing a movie every single year, sometimes multiple movies a year, you couldn't do that if it was just like 2 characters or a handful of them. You have to have enough characters so you can go back and forth between different stories, and they all have to be able to coexist at the same time, which is hard.
I was gonna say now they're in the next stage, right? They're like in stage 4 or 5 or something. And I don't know if you saw, because I know you've seen the Marvel shows, but spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen these or seen anything Marvel related or wants to. You know how in the intro when it shows like all the characters, did you notice that Iron Man, Captain America, and Black Widow are all black and gray, and then everybody else is in color?
Yeah.
Now I have a question. Does things like Divergent and Harry Potter, do those count as cinematic universes? Because they're not shown from different perspectives. But they're...
I think Harry Potter does because of the Fantastic Beasts movies, because those exist in the same universe as Harry Potter, but they're not Harry Potter.
And Cursed Child. We're going to pretend Cursed Child doesn't count.
Yeah, well, and that's a play, so that, I don't know, and it's told from I don't know, that was weird, because it's technically the same point of view, just his kids, so does that mean it's the same, because they're in it? I don't know. I think Divergent is just the one trilogy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is. I think they, like, talked about doing something else, and then the book or the movies failed so bad that they were like, just kidding.
Right. Yeah. And I think the Harry Potter spin-offs are interesting because
Oh, I love Fantastic Beasts.
I I like the idea of them, and I think they have their moments, but overall, I don't think they reach the quality of the originals.
The books are so much better.
That's true. That's true.
Books are
I,
always almost better, sometimes.
I just think that they were trying to go back and recreate the Harry Potter movies instead of organically letting another story come
Series
out, and I
B.
think that,
Right.
right. And I think that that shows, at least to me, in the kinds of stories they're telling. It always seems forced, and like they're trying to replicate what Marvel has, but they're just not giving that same connectedness and organic quality.
Now, there's always rumors that come out like every year that they're going to do a new Harry Potter movie with all the characters being adults with their kids now. And I'm like, okay, but how would that work?
Right. I I don't know. I feel like eventually they're going to do something with the original characters, whether it's with the original cast or whether it's in 20 years and they reboot the original movies. But I think that at the moment, there are too many people that consider those films classic.
If I was going to say, if they ever reboot those movies and like try to redo them, I will physically hit someone.
I think that the idea of extending that universe is cool. There's plenty of stuff in the books and the movies to talk about that wasn't covered in detail. But I think that right now, anyway, if you're going to tell stories with the original characters, you either have to recast them, which isn't going to go well, or you have to try to get the original cast back. And Daniel Radcliffe, for one, has said he's not going to do any Harry Potter thing that J.K. Rowling's involved in.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, obviously, I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
But
He said that he would consider it, but only if she's not involved.
J.K. Rowling is like being ostracized from Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah. But she still controls everything. I don't know. I think that at least at this point, I don't think they're going to do anything because there was the rumor that there was going to be that TV show coming to, HBO Max, I think. And it turned out that had been like, there was a memo that said, hey, if you have ideas, let us know because they're trying to develop something, but it's like not an actual project yet. It's just, hey, we could do this if we have a good idea. So let us know if we have an idea, which I think is okay.
Wait, for what?
There was a rumor that there was going to be a reboot of the original movies, but in a TV show form for HBO Max.
Of
So
Harry Potter?
That was the rumor. It was completely
No.
unfounded. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So to be clear, how do you feel about these? Yeah, I think that the idea of doing that would be interesting, but I think that you can't really do it that close to the release of the original movies because, they weren't released that long ago.
They actually weren't. But
Yeah. It seems like it was, but
you can't replace those. Those are, yeah, they were made in like 1999 through 2000 whatever, but you can't nope, you can't do it. You just can't.
at this point, the logical choice would be to extend the universe into other directions. And I do like the idea
And
of
that's
the
what
Fantastic Beasts
Marvel's
movies.
doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what Harry Potter is trying to do with The Cursed Child and with Fantastic Beasts movies, but it all feels very backwards. It feels like they realize they can make money, and so they're trying to find another story to tell instead of just having another story to tell, which, I don't know. I mean, if you like them, that's fine. I just don't love them.
I honestly, back to the whole Marvel thing, I'm surprised they got 23 movies out of this. Like,
And more, probably.
and yeah, there's probably like more little things hidden in there. And now that they're starting the new phase, it's called phase, by the way, not stage.
This isn't theater. There are no stages here.
It's interesting how they can keep going. Like, and people are so, well, I guess they have all the comics to go off of too.
But they also kind of treat those as inspiration, like I was talking about in another episode. They don't treat them directly as scripts, so they can do kind of whatever they want to. And they can
Right.
reuse comics, or there's lots of things they can do. And there are tons of comics to begin with, so.
For those of people that don't know the orders, there's Captain America, the First Avenger, and then it goes Captain Marvel. I think that was the movie that got like the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score out of almost all these 23 of these movies. Captain America Civil War. Now, why did they do that? It says Captain America Civil War, but it involves all the Avengers, so I thought it was Avengers Civil War.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like the butterfly effect I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it was because it's technically Captain America's movie because the whole plot revolves around you know, the
Bucky, right?
yeah, it's Bucky and the things that, but also there's this subplot about the Avengers, and it feels like they had a Captain America movie and an Avengers movie and just combined them. So it
Yeah,
really should be called Avengers Captain America Civil War, but that wouldn't have been a good title. So I don't know.
I just call it Civil War.
Me too. Loki takes place technically after the Avengers, the first one, but it's in a different universe where he escaped.
I
So
was gonna say because I saw someone say that like it was before the snap.
yes, it is taking place after the Avengers, but it's in a universe where instead of being captured and brought back to Asgard, he goes and escapes with the Tesseract. So this is a different version of Loki than we've seen for anything post Avengers. So all of Thor Ragnarok, all of Infinity War and Endgame, none of that has happened to him yet. So he is Avengers Loki that is going and doing new things in a different timeline. It's so very confusing. But I also think the fact that they can do that shows just how much thought they put into this. Because we heard that and went,
I'm confused, but this makes sense.
and I think that lesser cinematic universes would have just made us go,
No. No.
Yeah, it's definitely like kind of all over the place, which is why I'm glad like websites like that will like put the stuff in order so you don't have to physically figure it out for yourself, because
right.
knowing me, I'm not going to be able to physically figure that out for myself.
Felt that. It's time for an ad. Today's episode is sponsored by, well, actually, us.
What?
Well, the MCU only has 23 films, and this is episode 40 of Off Book, so we're definitely the world's best expert on cinematic universes.
That's not what that means.
Are you sure? We've had our distinct phases, several different casts with some overlap, the installments that do super well, and the ones that don't. A cool opening with some fancy music.
Huh? I guess.
Basically, just please keep watching the show. That's all.
Yeah. Anyways, real cinematic universes, when they do a lot of things right, can make quite an impact on pop culture.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Like we grew up with Marvel.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
like I know you did, because your family's like a whole like Disney, Marvel fanatics. But
It's a whole thing.
and I grew up with like boys, so I was always watching stuff like that instead of though I did watch the Barbie series, Barbie movies.
Oh,
That can be considered a cinematic universe right there.
Technically, yes, I suppose.
Barbie and the 12 Dancing Princesses and Barbie Rapunzel, and the first movie I ever saw the Barbie series was the Barbie and the Nutcracker.
Ah,
Oh,
yes.
I loved it. It was cute. But I have to say, any Fairytopia one was my favorite.
Hmm.
Because first off, they had oh gosh, what is his name? Bibble, the little Bibble.
I watched like 2 of those. I'm not cultured in Barbie.
Well, I guess I know what we're doing next time we hang out. Anyways, but yeah, so we grew up on these movies, and so it's definitely had like a cool impact. It was cool like growing up and like going to see the different movies in theaters,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess is kind of like weird nowadays because we have all the streaming services.
Yeah. At the very least, with all the shows, they're not going to theaters, and that's a kind of a similar experience there. And I think that the fact that Marvel has learned that they can create a story that is just as impactful at home on my TV instead of on a giant movie theater screen is good for them. And I think it shows just how much we've come to love these characters, that we will watch them on our TVs and cry just as much as we did in the theaters.
Well, because Marvel, they make so much money from it being in theaters. So when I worked at the movie theater, and I worked during Endgame, that
Oh.
was my senior year. I actually missed, I was gone the night that it premiered because I was at prom. But I worked the rest of the nights. Holy wow, we were busy. We literally had to turn people away because we didn't have tickets.
Oh, wow. I mean,
And we had
understandable.
three or four theaters full, and they were our biggest theaters.
But it just goes to show you just how many people latch onto these stories. And I think it's because when you have a good cinematic universe, you can tell stories that span, 10 years? I don't want to spoil anything, but the biggest emotional moments in Endgame would not have been possible if that was the first movie. If they just released Marvel's Avengers Endgame, it wouldn't have worked. It's only because, and it sounds dumb, but like this, more than any other Marvel film, couldn't have stood on its own. And I think that they knew that they had 10 years worth of stories and emotion to pull from. And I think that is exactly what cinematic universes can do, is they can tell a story longer than any film, because that was a 3-hour film, but it was actually like a 209-hour film because you knew all of the rest of the story that led up to that, which made Endgame so much more impactful.
And like I was saying earlier, if you change something, you're gonna lose audience, and that's how Marvel, I think, like did it so well, is they kept up with everything, and they made sure
Right.
every little detail was perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting to ask people what their favorite movie in the MCU is, because there are just such varied answers, and I think that's because pretty much every single installment in the universe is good. I mean, there are some that are less good, but I think that the standard is that they're pretty good movies. I think the most common answer is,
Yeah, this was a pretty good movie. It wasn't my favorite, but it was good.
and I think that is the fact that they're able to keep that up is very impressive. And I think that even though not every film is a cinematic masterpiece, or I guess none of them are cinema because Martin Scorsese said so, but even if none of them are cinema, I think the ones that are the closest to cinema can do so because of the rest of them.
Right. And like you were saying, people's like have very like favorite movies in the universe. Like mine was completely different from yours.
Right.
So, and I feel like it's how you connect to certain movies. So like I said, I wasn't interested in Star Wars movies, but it's some of your favorite movies. And they try to capture certain audiences with certain movies. And so like with Black Widow, I have a feeling a lot of females are probably going to like it because I think it's going to be about like female empowerment or something along those lines. And obviously Tom Holland with Spider-Man is going to attract the younger people because he's a younger Spider-Man that we've had. And I mean,
yeah.
Also, side note, aren't they supposed to do a movie with like Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, and who's the other one?
Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, those three.
Well, so Spider-Man No Way Home, which is the third Spider-Man film in the MCU, is, I think, confirmed to be a multiverse film because Doctor Strange is in it and they cast Jamie Foxx as Electro, I think. But everyone's rumoring now, or wondering if that also means that the other Spider-Men are also going to show up. And that has been denied multiple times by Marvel, but also no one trusts Marvel, so we have no idea what it's going to be. We just know that it is the most possible that it's been to see them in the MCU than before.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd feel with all three. I feel like it's just gonna be another Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse movie, which they are coming out with. There's a second one coming out, I think, this year or next year.
Yeah, and I'm excited for that.
That one was super good. Yeah.
It was very good.
But I don't know. They have those three have completely different personalities.
Yeah.
And they're both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are both way older now than Tom Holland is. Like Tom Holland's in his 20s, and I'm pretty sure those two are in their 30s or 40s. I could be wrong.
And Tom Holland looks even younger than he actually is, whereas I think
12.
they almost look older. Yeah, he looks 12. They look like they're in their 30s. So, I think it could work if they do it right, but I don't think that they're going to, because I think it's so hard to do. And this is going to be like one of the first films of the next phase. I don't really think they want to start with that. If they're going to do a crossover like that, it would be towards the end of the phase, because I can't really imagine after Endgame. In Endgame they didn't bring the other Spider-Man, and so now they're going to for something that is undoubtedly less than It just feels very weird.
And also, they just banged out 3 Spider-Man movies in the past, 4 years.
Yeah. Well, because they announced that eventually we're going to get a MCU Fantastic Four movie. We're getting the sequel to Captain Marvel. We're getting
another Fantastic Four movie?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Okay, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that they might know what they're doing there. Because I like the premise of it. It's just that the movies weren't good before. But I think that Marvel might know how to make it good.
Black Panther 2 basically is coming out July 8th, 2022. I'm interested to see how they're going to do that.
Yeah. Kevin Feige said that they were doing it in a way that Chadwick would be proud of, but, that's a pretty vague PR statement, so who knows?
The Marvels/Captain Marvel 2, November 11th, 2022. Can they make, Brie Larson not Captain Marvel? Sorry, this is a Brie Larson hate channel.
Oh, no. My channel's been hijacked. Honestly, I don't mind her as much. I just don't like the character. It's so powerful you have to put her off screen for the entire runtime of Endgame just to show up and fix everything at the end. Why would you create that character? Don't do that.
Well, I know that she's created, obviously, but why do you have to bring her in?
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. Whether it's going to be good or not is still up in the air.
Phase 5 should be interesting. I'm excited, but it's going to suck without Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, right?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I never remember. I
Yeah.
want them to do a Hawkeye movie, but I know they're
Oh yeah.
probably not going to.
Well, they're doing the Disney Plus show, which I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but hopefully it's going to be good.
Doesn't sound like Jeremy Renner's involved.
I think he is because they showed some set photos of him with the new actress. It is interesting though because I think that Marvel, for the first time, is dealing with we've built 23 films on this cast of characters, and now we're losing all of the original ones. And so, how do we move on? And I think that that is going to test their, the strength of their universe and how confident are they have enough stories to tell that if we lose some, we can continue and bring in new ones to make it still feel as full.
Yeah, I mean, because of COVID, we probably would have been at least like a fourth or a halfway through Phase 5 already.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's hard. It's gonna be hard to top Phase 4.
Yeah, especially Endgame. That was quite the event there.
I was indifferent about Endgame. Maybe it was just because I wasn't like the last movie I had seen was I didn't see Infinity War, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, he kind of needed to see Infinity War. I think at the very least it was a big event, both as a movie and for the characters. I mean, that was quite literally the end of the world, and in a way that was the most personal because half of all of the characters we've seen got disintegrated, and so I think that that kind of event where you leave the theater going,
Wait, how? What? But now the world's gonna end.
I think that kind of storytelling you don't get to do very often, and so I mean it's probably going to be another 23 films until they can get back to that. So how do you power down without losing that momentum?
Right. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I guess because part of their journey is the end, and this is that part. It's the end.
Next week, the complicated world of remakes and reboots. Make sure to comment below before this show gets rebooted in 20 years. Until then, hello to the future and goodbye to you.